Hello. So the topic of my presentation is contemporary large language models and literary abridgment, or the generation of versions that are suitable for, let's say, an audience of children or foreign language learners. And to what extent contemporary LLMs such as ChatGPT manage to generate such versions as of today. So I will provide a small background about literary abridgment. I will present the utilized texts, the investigated LLMs, the different abridgment scenarios that they have been tested on, then the evaluation methods and results from both automatic and human-based evaluation. And I'll wrap up with conclusions and future directions. Why abridgment? So first of all, reading for pleasure and at school, as we can sense intuitively and as has been proven, is academically and socially beneficial. Unfortunately, however, there has been a significant decrease in this practice in recent years. And the cause is an interesting vicious circle of the so-called Matthew effect, when the difficulties in reading are aggravated by the fact that they cause a lack of motivation too. So it is hard to start reading again. And here is where abridgment is supposed to come to the rescue. Currently, there is no particular NLP task such as abridgment that is tested. However, it does imply several established tasks, such as the use of long context, which is still pretty challenging for some large language models. There are existing limitations, such as the problem of a model focusing on information that is situated either in the beginning or end of the text, the so-called lost in the middle problem. Then the task of summarization, which is probably the most closely related one to literary abridgment. This is a task that is most commonly related not to literature or aesthetics, but to the reducing size of large amounts of data, such as news data, in order to be processed more quickly and more easily. And finally, creative or literary writing, which is a little bit of a controversial task for large language models. And it opens deep questions, such as about the nature of creativity. And as of today, large language models are most commonly used for subtasks that aid the writing process, such as the creation of a certain character or their characterization. The languages that the research focuses on are English, which is a category of its own, a higher resource language, French, and a lower resource language, Bulgarian. The utilized texts that will be used for abridgment will be the main one, The Little Duckling by Hans Christian Andersen, which is a very well-known, quite short but eventful story that it has been done on purpose for the original text to be taken in a different language originally from the ones that are being examined, in order to avoid the variable of translation versus original text. It was originally written in Danish. And then there are also abridged versions, professionally crafted abridged versions of this text in all three languages. And then there are a couple of secondary texts. The first one, The Little Match Girl, also by the same author and with similar characteristics, is used in the one-shot scenario that I will mention in a minute. And then The Gift Under the Bush is a story that has not been published anywhere. So it is in order to test the possibility of the models haven't encountered already the little duckling during training and this influencing the results. But it is cute little story. I'm a bit partial because it's my son who wrote it. The investigated models are ChatGPT as per GPT 3.5, Gemini in its Pro version, Mistral Instruct, and I think excitedly for us, BG-GPT by Insight. And here come the abridgment scenarios. So zero shot, or just giving the model the original text and asking it to provide an abridged version. Then chunking, which is basically dividing the text into several parts and then asking the model to provide an abridged version of each part separately. And then one shot, as mentioned, when the model is provided not only with the text that needs to be abridged, but also with an example of another text here, the little Girl, and an already abridged version of it. And then there is also the cross-lingual scenario, which comes in 3 sub-scenarios: direct, such as zero shot, and then a chain of thought scenario where more than one prompt is given, such as when the model is asked to first translate the text and then abridge it, and then vice versa, first abridge and then translate it. Starting with the automatic evaluation of the automatically generated texts, there are 10 separate metrics that have been employed. Rouge score, which is commonly used for summarization of text and determines the overlap in terms of words between 2 texts. Then bird score, which is often seen as an improved version of Rouge, in that it considers not words but embeddings. So it focuses on meaning and can account for synonyms, let's say. And then the rest are readability-based atomic characteristics that have been traditionally used as a proxy for complexity of a text. Some are length-based, the total number of words per sentence, and the number of letters per word. Then there are a few vocabulary-based ones, type-to-token ratio, concreteness rating as per Brisbart's concreteness rated scale, and words outside of a given frequency list in the language. Then there is a syntax-related one, the ratio of content to function words. And finally, the percentage of anaphora denoting words, such as demonstrative pronouns or definite articles within a text. I will briefly explain what is used as gold standard in automatic evaluation. Here is where the professionally human-made abridged versions of the text come into play. So we take the range of values or ratios of the features, as explained, taken for the original texts versus each professional abridged version. For example, we're taking the characteristic number of words. If it varies between 1.5 and 4 for the 4 professional abridged versions of the Little Duckling, then this range is taken as gold standard. And afterwards, we take a text that has been abridged by an LLM, for example, a ChatGPT generated abridgment of the Little Duckling, and we see that the ratio for number of words is 5. Then this goes outside the range that we've determined as gold standard. So this particular text is marked negatively for this particular feature. Further information about scoring a model based on this kind of evaluation. The percentage of examined characteristics that fall within the gold standard range. For instance, we have a total of 24 texts generated by ChatGPT for all scenarios that we're looking at, and they're evaluated for a total of 226 applicable characteristics. We see upon calculation that 93 of them fall within the gold standard range. Then we give the score of ChatGPT as 41% overall. Moving on to the human evaluation stage, which went afterwards. First of all, the 6 highest scoring large language model generated texts were determined based on the mentioned evaluation of characteristics. Where there were the same scores, it was a variety of generation scenarios that was sought. And a survey was composed in 3 versions for every one of the 3 languages. And each version consisted of 2 texts, one unique or only present in this version, and one that was also present in another version in order to facilitate the calculation of agreement between the respondents. And minimum 1 participant per version and per language responded to the survey, and they were either native or fluent speakers of the language in question. A few words about the human evaluation protocol. It tested qualitative characteristics such as understandability, correctness, consistency, textual coherence, and aesthetic appeal. And there was a scale of 4 possible answers between no, through mostly no, mostly yes, and yes. And comments in free texts were also encouraged. Moving on to the results, first of all, those of automatic evaluation. Per language, we can see, as should be expected, that English did best. However, a little surprisingly, it was Bulgarian, the lower resource language, that followed, and not French, which performed significantly worse. Then by model, this is a little bit deceptive because Mistral was marked as closing highest in terms of percentage. However, quite a few of the experiments that were not based on English were discarded because of bad quality or complete inability to provide output. So important here also is that the performance of ChatGPT and Gemini is globally exactly the same. Then performance by generation scenario. The best rated scenarios were chunks, followed by cross-lingual in its direct version. And then interestingly, the alternative text, the one that has not been published, actually performed better in a 0-shot scenario than the little duckling, which goes to say that either the text was not encountered by the models during training, or if it was, then this did not influence the results. Then by language and model, here we have only ChatGPT and Gemini because the other 2 models were really focused on one of the languages, such as BGGPT on Bulgarian. And Gemini performs better than ChatGPT only for Bulgarian, whilst ChatGPT performs better for English and French. By language and scenario, here we can see that there's really differing performance when it comes to the different scenarios and the different languages. For example, in particular, we can see that Bulgarian performs really well in the cross-lingual scenarios compared to the other languages, possibly due to a benefit from original text in another language, particularly English. And finally, by model and scenario, here it is difficult to generalize a trend. For instance, we can see again that ChatGPT and Gemini perform, although globally equally well, differently in relation to discrete abridgement scenarios. And finally, the results of human evaluation. They have been really dependent on the particular text and respondent, so they have been hard to generalize. So I will just mention the best scoring texts and some problems that have been noted or exact remarks. In English, the best scoring texts were the ChatGPT cross-lingual direct and ChatGPT cross-lingual chain of thought with abridgement first, and they were rated perfectly, 100% for all categories. The Mistral model was associated with low correctness, and inconsistency of information was noted, such as, for instance, the little duckling being referred to as it or he in different parts of the text, or if the same event taking place more than once. For French, the highest rated model was Gemini Crosslingual Direct. Problems with complexity, both in terms of vocabulary and grammar, were noted. And some comments included that the texts were not fluid or frustratingly weakly developed. And finally, Bulgarian. Here, Gemini Chunks rated highest. Some problems with correctness were noted, such as non-existent words or somehow non-suitable. And the text was often referred to as seemingly translated or close equivalent. Here, I don't think I have the time to dwell on these particular interesting instances in the Bulgarian text, but I will leave it here just for a second so you can see about the depressed duckling that turns into a beautiful pelican. And conclusions and future directions. The English texts understandably demonstrated the best quality, both in terms of automatic and human-based evaluation. ChatGPT and Gemini were models that are considered competitive and that did score competitively across all languages, including Bulgarian, which I think is a great thing to keep in mind. And there have been different weaknesses of the models in relation to different scenarios and even to different languages. Context length, it has been confirmed to still be a major limitation, as some texts were not possible to work with due to their length. And then possible ways to improve performance, because this study was meant to test the current or native performance of the models. Additional training, such as training on literary texts, then more elaborate prompt engineering. For instance, when it comes to the chunking scenario, there are references that point to possible improvement through merging of different outputs, again, using a large language model rather than just using them as R. And natural next steps in this framework would be the use of a variety of literary texts rather than just one text, which was the case now, in order to determine the overall capabilities and trends. So texts of different genre, year of writing, or length can be used, for instance. And finally, something that's always a requirement would be to experiment with newer models, as by now, even the GPT 3.5 model is somewhat obsolete. Okay, this will be the end. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take questions.